Every tractor today uses a piece of engineering invented in 1946 in Brantford, Ontario, by a company most of you have never heard of. Cockshutt farm equipment solved a problem so dangerous it had been maiming farmers for a generation. Within a decade, every major American manufacturer quietly adopted their design. None credited the source. Then they went further, buying the company, gutting its identity, and shutting its doors forever. But before the erasure came the invention. And before the invention came a flaw that was killing men in the field. Across the wheat fields of the Canadian prairies and the corn belts of the Midwest, farmers once braced themselves for the jolt of a machine designed to betray them. The power takeoff, or PTO, was supposed to be the farmer's helper, a spinning shaft that let a tractor drive a baler, a binder, or a combine. But for decades, every time a farmer pressed the clutch to slow down, shift gears, or stop for a moment, the PTO stopped dead too. The implement behind would seize, belts would slacken, and the sudden halt could whip chains or snap drive lines without warning. Letters poured in to agricultural journals and manufacturers' offices describing shattered wrists, crushed fingers, and near misses. In a 1944 dispatch to the Nebraska Tractor Test Lab, one farmer wrote, "My right hand was caught when the binder jammed as I clutched to turn at the headland." Reports from Ontario's Ministry of Agriculture counted dozens of injuries each season. Hands caught, arms broken, men thrown from their seats when a baler chain recoiled after a PTO stall. The danger was so routine that many farm safety bulletins simply warned, "Never disengage clutch with PTO running." But the cost was more than physical. Each time the PTO stopped, the machinery behind the tractor ground to a halt, sometimes mid-row. A binder would choke on a bundle. A combine's auger would clog with grain. Prairie wheat fields saw as much as 12% of a harvest spoiled by jammed implements and interrupted work. For every injury, there were hours lost to clearing out snarled belts or restarting engines that had stalled under sudden load. In the words of one Saskatchewan grower, "You learn to live with broken chains and wasted afternoons." The flaw was mechanical, but its toll was human and economic. The transmission-dependent PTO, standard on every North American tractor before 1946, forced farmers to risk injury, accept wasted crops, and endure a pace of work dictated by the machine's limitations, not the farmer's needs. The letters and accident reports piled up, and the question echoed from county fairs to factory floors. Could anyone build a tractor that would break this cycle of danger and loss? Harold Cockshutt, the company's chief engineer and namesake, studied the problem that haunted every farmyard. He knew that a power takeoff tied to the main clutch was a design flaw waiting to be solved. In 1946, Cockshutt filed a patent for a new kind of PTO, one that would keep spinning, no matter what the tractor's wheels were doing. The solution was both simple and radical, a dual-clutch system using a dedicated gear train that linked the engine's crankshaft directly to the PTO shaft, bypassing the transmission entirely. The heart of the design was a separate, engine-driven clutch mounted at the rear of the main gear housing. Instead of a single pedal controlling both the tractor's movement and the implement's drive, the operator now had two levers, one for the transmission, another for the PTO. Pulling back on the PTO lever engaged a smaller, spring-loaded clutch that sent power straight from the engine to the spinning shaft at the back. The main clutch could be pressed to halt the tractor's wheels, but the PTO kept turning at a steady 540 RPM, keeping the baler, binder, or combine running as if nothing had changed. Patent drawings from 1946 show a short helical gear connecting the engine to the PTO clutch, with a safety shear pin built in to brake under overload. The mechanism was so robust, the company's own demonstration at the Brantford plant involved stopping the tractor dead in its tracks, while a baler behind it kept churning out bales, uninterrupted. The independent PTO lever gave the operator total control. No more fighting the clutch, no more risking a jam or a broken chain every time the tractor slowed down. This was not a minor tweak. It was a mechanical declaration of independence, freeing the farmer from the tyranny of a single clutch. Cockshutt's live PTO was the first of its kind in North America, and the patent, granted in 1949 as U.S. number 2,753,914, laid out every detail. The system's elegance lay in its simplicity, but its impact would be measured in safer hands, unspoiled harvests, and hours regained in every field. On the open prairie, the Cockshutt 30 found its proof not in company brochures, but in the hands of working farmers. Nebraska's official tractor test sheet from 1950 recorded the numbers in black and white: 25 horsepower at the drawbar, a steady pull of 2,200 pounds at 5 miles per hour, and fuel consumption that undercut its rivals by nearly 10%. The Buda 153 cubic inch gasoline engine delivered 35 horsepower at the crank, while the early diesel option, rare for its era, offered a torque advantage and a 20% savings in fuel, an edge that mattered when every gallon counted. Production at the Brantford plant reached 2,800 units a year at its peak, and over 21,000 Model 30s rolled onto fields between 1946 and 1957. The tractor's distinctive red paint and rounded fenders became a familiar sight from Ontario to Saskatchewan. Dealers reported backlogs and waiting lists as word spread. Here was a machine that didn't break chains, didn't stall implements, and didn't force a farmer to gamble his fingers every time he stopped at the end of a row. For men like Earl Miller of Manitoba, the difference was immediate. He wrote, "With the Cockshutt 30, I finish my harvest with both hands and all my patience. I used to lose a day every week to jams and repairs. Now I just keep going." Miller's testimonial, echoed in farm papers and at county fairs, captured the loyalty the Model 30 inspired. It wasn't just another tractor. It was the first to let the farmer set the pace, not the machine. In the words stamped on every Nebraska test sheet and repeated in the fields, the Cockshutt 30 delivered what it promised: continuous power, safer work, and a measure of pride for those who ran it. By 1955, American tractor giants finally began to catch up, but not a single brochure or press release admitted where the breakthrough had come from. John Deere's 1955 catalog rolled off the presses with bold green headlines: "Now live PTO for uninterrupted power." The copy promised, "Keep your baler or combine running even as you shift or stop." There was no mention of a Canadian patent, no nod to Cockshutt's 9-year lead, or the thousands of machines already at work on prairie fields. Deere's engineering bulletins described the live PTO as a new solution, a triumph of their own research, while internal memos acknowledged the technology's origin only in confidential files. International Harvester followed in 1956 with the Super Farmall 400, advertising independent power, a major advance in field efficiency. Their marketing team flooded farm magazines with diagrams and testimonials, positioning the feature as a fresh innovation. Again, the story omitted any reference to the Cockshutt Model 30, the original patent, or the Canadian engineers who had solved the problem a decade prior. IH's public language treated the live PTO as if it had sprung fully formed from their own test plots. The pattern was unmistakable. Each time a US manufacturer rolled out their version, the language was the same, now available, new for this year, a revolution in tractor power. Not one credited the Canadian company, whose design had already proven itself in wheat fields and hay meadows from Manitoba to Iowa. The Cockshutt name vanished from the narrative, replaced by a chorus of American claims. The innovation that had saved hands, crops, and hours was now recast as an American achievement, its true origin erased by the sheer weight of corporate advertising and dealer catalogs. For Cockshutt, the betrayal was not a single act, but a slow, deliberate rewriting of history, one that would only deepen as American ownership tightened its grip. In 1953, Oliver executives arrived in Brantford with polite handshakes and a proposal that seemed harmless: a licensing deal for Cockshutt's live PTO and a modest purchase of shares. The arrangement opened a door, not just to technology, but to the heart of a Canadian company that had built its reputation on independence. Oliver's first stake was small, just enough to secure a seat at the table and a window into Cockshutt's engineering pipeline. But the share register told a different story each year. By 1962, Oliver's holdings had quietly crossed the threshold of control, surpassing 50%. The boardroom in Brantford, once the seat of Canadian decision-making, now answered to Ohio. The shift was subtle at first. Oliver managers spoke of partnership, promising to keep the Cockshutt name and red paint on Canadian tractors. But internal memos from 1964 reveal a coordinated rebranding campaign. Dealers received new signage, parts shipments arrived with Oliver logos, and the technical bulletins, once drafted in Brantford, were now printed in Charles City, Iowa. The Cockshutt 570, a machine born of Canadian engineering, was suddenly an Oliver 570 in the US Midwest, its heritage erased in a single stroke of green paint and a new badge. Workers on the Brantford floor watched as American supervisors replaced familiar faces, and the cadence of production shifted to match Oliver's priorities. The local press reported on the integration with cautious optimism, but among engineers and assembly line veterans, the sense of autonomy slipped away. Cockshutt's research department, once the birthplace of the live PTO, found its budgets trimmed and its projects redirected to meet Oliver's broader corporate goals. By 1964, the Cockshutt name survived mostly as a marketing tool. The company's board meetings, once marked by debate over Canadian design, now revolved around Oliver's sales targets and US dealer demands. The live PTO, a Canadian invention that had redrawn the map of North American farming, became just another feature in Oliver's catalog, its origin story quietly buried beneath layers of corporate paperwork and new paint. What began as a strategic alliance had become a slow motion capture, with Canadian engineering reduced to a footnote in someone else's ledger. In the years following the White Motor Corporation takeover, in the spring of 1982, the gates at Brantford swung shut for the last time. The Cockshutt factory, once the heartbeat of a city and a symbol of Canadian ingenuity, went silent. The closure wiped out 650 jobs in a single announcement. Jobs held by welders, machinists, engineers, and generations of families who had built tractors for more than a century. For 105 years, the plant's whistle had marked the rhythm of daily life in Brantford. Now the only sound was the echo of footsteps leaving the empty floor. No national headline mourned the loss. There were no editorials in Toronto or Ottawa, No calls for rescue from Parliament. The news landed quietly, tucked into the inside pages of local papers, as if the end of Canada's last true tractor works was a private sorrow, not a public wound. Workers gathered outside the locked gates, holding pay stubs and pink slips, some with 40 years service, others just starting out. There was no farewell ceremony, no commemorative plaque, only the knowledge that their work, their skill, their pride, had been made redundant by distant decisions and foreign priorities. A manufacturing lineage that had survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and a century of technological change was erased overnight. The machines were auctioned, the red paint faded, and the Cockshutt name slipped quietly into memory. For the people of Brantford, the silence that followed was not just the end of a factory, but the end of a legacy that had once promised Canada a place at the forefront of farm innovation. On a spring morning in rural Ontario, a restored Cockshutt 30 crosses the auction block, its red paint gleaming, the PTO lever still ready for work. The bidding starts at 15,000 Canadian dollars and climbs quickly, 20, then 30, sometimes as high as 45,000 for an original live PTO survivor. These numbers would have stunned the men who once watched the Brantford plant go silent. Now, decades after the last Canadian-built tractor rolled off the line, collectors and restorers gather at farm rallies and vintage shows to celebrate what industry once discarded. Annual Cockshutt rallies in Ontario draw hundreds of enthusiasts, some arriving from as far as Alberta or the Dakotas. Rows of tractors, each one carefully restored, line up under banners that read, "First with live PTO." For many, these gatherings are more than nostalgia. They are acts of stewardship, a way to keep alive the memory of a machine that changed the rhythm of farm work and set a standard the industry could not ignore. At these events, stories pass between generations. How the Model 30 kept the baler running through a missed shift, or how it spared a grandfather's hands from the dangers of a dead PTO. Historians now recognize what was once overlooked. The Cockshutt 30's live PTO is cited in technical journals as the origin point for a feature found on nearly every modern tractor. Yet the company's name rarely appears in American histories or museum exhibits. The irony is sharp. Machines once dismissed as obsolete now command a premium, valued precisely because they bear the mark of an innovation that others claimed but never credited. In the end, the Cockshutt 30 survives not as a footnote, but as a collector's prize, a symbol of Canadian ingenuity, preserved by those who refuse to let its story be buried. Today, every modern tractor bears the mark of an innovation born in Brantford, yet the name behind it is lost to corporate consolidation and national indifference. As global supply chains erase local legacies, the Cockshutt story warns us, engineering breakthroughs alone do not guarantee recognition or survival. History remembers what power allows it to remember. The fields run safer because of Cockshutt, even if few recall why. Share your thoughts below.